So some section of this unit was doing stop and frisk, or the whole unit was doing stop and frisk. So you can educate us. But 2,000 of those stops weren't being reviewed by the department. And so how did that happen?
Yeah, so let me sort of step back for 1 second, back to that the case, the suit that the judge found the NYPD was stopping New Yorkers unconstitutionally and stopping and frisking them. And by the way, I mean, everybody hears the term stop and frisk and you think, it's bad. And it's because you got to think for a second of what it actually means in practice, just so that everybody can wrap their head around it, which is that what cops would do is they would hang out, or they would be in their car and see somebody. Again, they were supposed to have some kind of cause, but it was happening at such scale that obviously there was not cause, and they would stop them, right? And then they would actually usually question them in some way, and then they would frisk them. And you're not allowed to stop somebody just without cause, and you're not allowed to stop somebody and question them without cause, and you're sure as shit not allowed to get into their personal space and pat them down and frisk them without a good reason. And so that's what was happening. The judge has said, I'm not just going to say that this is unconstitutional. I'm going to create a whole structure to make sure you stop fucking doing it. And the structure consisted of, you guys have to use body-worn cameras, and there's a federal monitor over the NYPD. And what the federal monitor would do would be to look at cases and to see, to pull out kind of sample cases. Are they doing policing properly or not? And the police themselves would have to fill out forms to say, okay, we stopped somebody here, so we're going to fill out a stop form so everybody knows. You can check it. It's all cool. Don't worry about it, right? Okay, what happens? Well, those forms are often not filled out, or to put it more simply, NYPD officers very often do not record, make no record of the stops that they're doing. When they do make a record, they then they basically get, frankly, a shit review by a superior, which is required. And how do we know this? We know this because the federal monitor would look at it, because now they have footage, usually, though not always, because if they don't turn on their cameras, but they would often have footage, and they would say, okay, let's look at this stop that the officer thought was fine, the supervisor thought was fine, and the supervisor thought was fine. And I remember the stats here. They would say that about 70%, something like that, 60 to 70% of the stops that the officer and maybe supervisor thought were fine were actually, in fact, unconstitutional, right? And then a somewhat lower percentage, like half of the stops that had gone to the kind of central command and thought were proper, were actually unconstitutional. So that's actually how the process was working. So what happened here is that because it was as I was describing it, a kind of ghost unit, right? It wasn't properly tracked in the system because it had been so ad hoc that the stops, even if they were technically recorded, were never sent to the right people. The right people didn't know that they existed. And so they just kind of went nowhere. They just were went into a dustbin, basically. And it was thousands of them. And by the way, it was thousands of them by the most aggressive unit in the NYPD, or one of them. Right. And so you had all these improper stops. And then they looked at them after the fact, by the way, and this federal monitor, and said, yeah, a lot of your stops are blatantly unconstitutional. And they've been trying to kind of reverse it and to figure it all out. But basically, thousands of stops were made without anybody looking over their shoulder by an aggressive unit with lots of officers in it who have had a demonstrated pattern of abuse.
Wow. A unit filled with officers with a demonstrated history of abuse, with commanders who have a history of that, of some sort, and it goes rogue, and no one's looking over their shoulders to see if they're doing the right job. That sounds a whole lot... That's magnificently convenient. Right? And I always say, these practices exist because the department is, or the local district commander, someone is benefiting from the practices existing, right? They get audited. They look at the numbers, and the numbers are changed because you have this unit out there. Someone gets their little gold star.